everyone, I'm Rita. I'm a craftsperson at Codurance. I'll be facilitating this meeting today. I don't know if we can wait a bit more for people to join, but I'll be introducing the session. So today our session will be hosted by José Huerta. He's our managing director at Codurance. And like he was saying, this is a session, this is a part of a series. You can see our previous sessions and our YouTube channel. Elena will put the link on the chat. And yes, today we'll be talking about providing feedback in a way that is helpful for the team, so the team can grow. I'm sure Jose will mention this, but the session is to be, interactive. So if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, you can just share them in the chat, and I'll be taking a look at it, and we can ask them and try to answer all together. And that's that, Jose. You, my guest.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction, and welcome everyone. Those with the camera on and those with the camera off, they're all welcome. Hopefully we will all learn together, because that's part of what this session is about, right? As Rita mentioned, this is part of a series on technical coaching, and in life and in coaching in general, and especially for technical coaching, it's quite important to be able to provide good feedback, right? Like, feedback is part of what helps people grow and improve. And as someone who is trying to help a team to improve their practices and so on, it's quite important that we know what good feedback looks like and how to deliver it and how to create a culture of feedback and learning, right? So that's precisely what this session is about today. We're going to be focusing on things that are maybe not specific to code, but they're very useful for life in general. And when you have to do the work of a technical coach, a lot of the times you need to draw from these tools as well, in order to be effective and to really get people to reach their full potential, right? So today, as I mentioned, the focus is feedback. I'm going to start sharing my screen, and you let me know if you can see what I have in my screen. Yes, because one of the sessions I started talking and I hadn't shared the screen, and like 5 minutes in, someone says, are you pointing at something? Like, are you sharing something, or this is just you speaking all the time? So I normally
can you set one request? It's because I'm super old, so
I will be zooming. I will be zooming in and out. Actually, I've been creating this mirror board with all information from all the sessions that we've done in the past. So if you would like to know more about this and some of the other topics that we touched on, that is available as a link in the description of most of the things. Is in our YouTube channel, so you can go there, check it out. If not, we'll put it in the comments or in the description, whatever it is, right? So giving great feedback. How many of you have been victims of bad feedback? Let's put it like that. A few, right? Again, and this is not something that is specific to people who work with code or whatever. Like, you normally find things like, this code is crap, or this is all sorts of nasty things that people say without thinking, and that might not necessarily be the best way to communicate what you want, and to achieve that goal that you're looking for when you are delivering feedback. So what do you think is the goal of delivering feedback or sharing feedback?
Victor says people are afraid to tell the truth sometimes.
To tell the truth. Okay. Any other reason to provide feedback?
You want to generate
Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I can go. Communicating expectations. Sometimes you give feedback when the other party is not responding correctly to the expectations you had on them.
Okay, so communicating expectations, kind of aligning around expectations. Okay, any other reason?
It's related with what you mentioned before, this like generating an impact and caring about it.
So in general, although feedback is used in many different ways, what you're trying to look for is a change. Yeah, a change outside. Usually, you don't give feedback to yourself most of the time, right? Like you normally are trying to get someone to behave in a different way and to maybe do things differently, correct? Or do something that you need them to do, right? And what usually happens when you deliver bad feedback?
They don't change. Or
they don't change. That behavior change. In fact, you may accentuate or even degrade the relationship or the relationship with this person, right? So giving feedback is almost something that can hinder. Giving bad feedback is something that can hinder your ability to help other people. Are we okay with that? Yeah. Okay. So then today we will talk about the tactics of giving feedback. We will talk a little bit about how do you create a culture of feedback, because we'll see it's a bit, I would say, more important than actually getting good at delivering feedback. That should come afterwards. No? And we will try to do a little bit of an exercise. Yeah. So because this is geared towards technical coaching, yeah, let's start with a little bit of an exercise here. Yeah, I am going to share a pull request. Well, not a pull request. I'm going to share some code. Yeah, and if some of you are developers, this will be good for you. You can check it out. I'll paste the link here in the chat. And this is a repository that we have with a, let me see in the chat. Where do I get the chat? Basically
on the bottom of the screen, right next to
participate. No, because I'm sharing right now.
Oh,
so I'm not sure.
So I think you have to stop sharing.
Oh yes, it's at the bottom of the screen, but I have 3 screens, so it's not working. So here you have the code. This is a public repository. I send a link to the C# code for it. Yeah. And you tell me when you can see it.
We can.
You can, or you can't.
I can. Yeah, I open the link.
All right. So you have there. It's a kata. Yeah.
There are 2, no, it's the same. To and to test. Okay.
Yeah, so that's the C# version of it. Okay, but if you move out of the repo, you have it in different languages as well, in other languages. Yeah. So would someone want to look at that code and tell me, if you were giving me feedback, yeah, on that code, what would you say? Rita, do you want to do the pleasures, or Leo, or whoever? Yeah.
Rita and I work together, so it's fine. By classes, no? I can see public class.
No, imagine that this is a pull request that I sent to you, right? Like what would you normally tell me and stuff?
Oh, I don't see a pull request.
No, it's not a pull request.
Oh, sorry.
It's just a repo that I shared. No, but imagine that you get this as part of a pull request, right? Like,
yes.
So
right,
what feedback would you give me?
I'd be tempted to ask for a README, I guess, initially.
Hey, so I couldn't. So what would you say to me?
I'd say, I don't have enough context. Please, can I have a README?
Everyone's on their best behavior, but usually what I would probably get is like, listen, I understand squat of what you
what the hell is
in
this?
there. Like, I don't have time for this shit, right? Like, really, like next time that you send this thing, either give me context beforehand, we'll put a README, whatever. And also, I saw lots of code smells in this thing, like, I don't know where you went to school, but you ask for your money back, basically, right? And again, I was quite polite on this. I've heard lots of other versions of this, right? But
yes, in
what
chat we have the same things. What are X and Y? I need a README.
I need to read me X and Y.
Very polite, very polite.
Everyone's very polite, but usually it's not.
Excuse me,
that
sir.
polite.
Please may you provide a README versus what is this? Who are you?
Exactly. What do you think? No, exactly. Right. So this is the thing. Like a lot of times we give feedback, in our day-to-day without really thinking too much about what it is that. But in the end, if I ask you, what is it that you were trying to achieve, Leo? With I may need a README or whatever. Like what's behind that intention?
I guess I didn't have enough context. I guess ultimately it's that I want to help. I want to give good feedback.
Listen, I would like to help you, but with the information that you gave me, etc., I don't have enough context to be able to provide you with good enough thing, right? And then maybe there's a little bit of frustration as well. Nikita, you wanna add something? You're saying?
Unless you have a goal, you really cannot comment on anything, because maybe the whole goal of this stuff is to waste people's time and make them frustrated. I mean, maybe you're creating up for prison to punish people, and here I will come and make it pleasant and so on. So I really need to talk to you first and ask you why. Why do we need one more tic-tac-toe?
Okay, that's a good one. So part of the thing is, a lot of the times we don't have a clear intention on what it is that we're giving the feedback for. We just, provide the feedback, etc., right? Also, the way that we provide it is not the best in many areas, at least not to achieve what it is that we want to achieve, and so on. Do you think giving feedback on code is very different from, I don't know, providing feedback on, I don't know, not following the agreed ways of working of the team, for instance? Let's say someone doesn't show up to a daily meeting, or it's constantly interrupting when we're doing mob programming or whatever, like whatever it is that you find kind of annoying in that collaboration, or it's not being productive.
Well, it's a tricky question, because in the case of the code, I can see, for example, you send some code that I don't know the context, but I can critique the code and the code, just the code, not the person that is behind the code. So maybe I can tell you, okay, we have here some comments telling me, okay, if happens this, then do some stuff. So maybe we can translate that to a new function that we can start this functionality to another part, and can be read super easy and so on. But always critiquing the code. But in the case that you are late to a meeting, is a little bit different, because it's related with the person at the end. So I need to be a little bit careful with that. It's the objective at the end. So.
You brought up a bunch of really good points that we will talk more about, right? But one of the things is, what am I giving feedback on? We talked about goal, like what is it that I'm trying to achieve with this? We talked about the tactics, the way that I'm going about it, whether I'm aware or not. You talked about providing feedback on something that is not the person. Because basically what you're saying is, it's easier to do, if I understood correctly, it's easier to give feedback on the code than it is maybe on, on the other stuff that you mentioned, because the other feedback is on the person, right? Like this one, I can talk about the code, and they're two separate things. I can say, no, it's your code that is crap, right? Right? It's not you, it's your code that is crap.
It's your code.
No? And that's interesting, because not necessarily like this is the thing, right? Like if I'm telling you, if I'm giving you feedback about being late to the meeting or whatever, what I am giving you feedback on is not you as a person. It's the behaviors that you are displaying. And this is why I mentioned at the beginning that, when you are giving someone feedback, usually what you're after is some sort of change in their behavior, right? So it's important as well when you're talking, like, are you focusing on the person? The feedback that you use is like an ad hominem kind of thing, no? Or is it or are you talking about certain behaviors and the things that you want to change, right? We will see that a lot of the things that we will talk about and discuss in here are applicable for any kind of feedback. Okay, so let's dig into it. We have let's go into the first step, because a lot of the times we spend a lot of effort on teaching people how to provide feedback. Yeah. And this is things like the sandwich method and this kind of stuff. Have you heard of that before? Like tell them, good feedback, and then, you give them the critique, the critique, and then end with, positive feedback again. And that will help you, that would help the person kind of take the feedback. How do you feel when someone uses that strategy with you?
I get afraid of listening to any compliments, because you always know that they're going to punch you. You're just waiting for the moment to happen, and even if it's just a compliment, you're running away and like.
This is great, because that's exactly how most people feel. Like you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Like he started with, I really like the way that you work, blah blah blah. I really like that. Okay, but no, and then after you hear but, yeah, everything else that he said before, you just erase from your mind and you just focus on what's coming afterward. Right? Now, before you teach people how to, I think that what people need to do is, especially when you're dealing with this kind of scenario, now you're coaching a team, etc., you need to start creating a culture of people asking and giving feedback. Yeah. And this is much harder to do. We talked about culture in the previous session. How do you affect the culture of the team and all that stuff? So if you want a refresher on that, please go and take a look. But that is the first step, because in the end, people may not be good at giving feedback, but if you're good at hearing feedback, you can take stuff from whatever everyone is saying, right? Like even if someone, someone, let's say that Leo was not as polite, he was like, oh, your code is crap, just review that and then come back. Even if he's giving me that feedback, which is not very specific, it doesn't have a lot of things that you would require in good feedback, I can always go and say, oh, it's a Leo, but why do you think my code is crap? What was it that you saw in the code that is not up to standard? How will you do it differently? What are the other options? Where could I look? Like whatever. Like I can dig into the feedback that you're giving me and not stay on the first layer of that, right? So I always like to say that all feedback is a present. Sometimes it just comes wrapped in shit, right? But there might be something in there, right? And if you apply that kind of mindset, where people are ready to receive feedback because they are the ones asking for it, that already is an improvement, because then you can work on the other stuff, because that, of course, it will make it easier for people to deliver the feedback. But if people don't want to hear the feedback, it doesn't matter how much you sugarcoat it, doesn't matter what techniques you use, like they're just not going to be ready to receive that feedback, right? So that is the step number one. It's better to work on creating that culture than it is working on, how to deliver it. Yeah. Especially because of all the things that we're gonna, other things that we're gonna discuss, like, the sandwich method and so on and so forth. Yeah. So how do you go about doing that? You need to teach people how to listen to feedback. Yeah. So this is the first part that I mentioned. Okay, see, so how do you do that? Like, what are if you came to some of the previous sessions, you may have an advantage here, because I talked about some of the mechanisms that you can use for that. But let's say you're working with a team, you're a team lead, you're doing some technical coaching or whatever, it may not be technical. Yeah. How do you get people to listen for feedback or ask for feedback?
Leading by example.
Exactly. And what would that look like?
Going to your peers to know their feedback about you, maybe.
Exactly. And then what?
Take actions about it. And
even before that, then you don't react to the feedback, right? Like this is the first thing that is interesting. No? Like, oh, you need to lead by example, so you should ask for feedback. But a lot of people ask for feedback, but they don't really want the feedback. Yeah, especially when it's like some people ask for feedback because what they want is kudos, right? Like the pat on the back, tell me, what I did great. I wanna feel warm inside. Warm the potato, right? If you really you need to genuinely want the feedback, but it is your behavior the first one that starts changing, right? Like you go and you ask people for feedback about, and then when they give you the feedback, you listen to the feedback yourself, because how you react to that feedback will set a precedence as well, right? Like if you go and I ask Christian, can you give me some feedback on this talk? And then he says, oh, I didn't really like it, blah, blah. You took a very long time to explain things, blah, blah. And I don't like that. And I immediately start, rebutting whatever you're saying. What is Christian going to think? You didn't really want my feedback, no. So the next time that you want that you come and ask, oh, Christian, can you give me some feedback? He will either tell you just what you want to hear, or oh, everything was great, blah blah, or he will simply just not give it to you. Yeah, so that's the first thing. Like you start by leading by example. Again, we talked about those things, no, in a previous session, and when you do, the first thing is no feedback on the feedback. That's the first rule of feedback. Yeah. And sometimes people are expecting you to react to it. Yeah, this has happened to me. Like, hey, you wanted to say something, Christian? I saw your hand going up.
Yeah, sorry. Even not reacting, agreeing or adding things to that feedback. I mean, if
that's a different thing. Like you can listen actively. Yeah, you can be like, oh, okay, yeah, and what is this? No, and you can, of course, you can ask questions to try to understand the feedback further, right? What do you mean by this? Like, what will you give me an example? Like all of those things are very valid. Yeah. What I mean by no feedback on the feedback is, it's like, oh yes, but what you don't know is that I did this, and then but then when I forget about it, because that's not the point of that exercise. Yeah, that is not the point of that exercise, and this is something that people again miss out on a lot of the time, right? Like it is not, you ask me for feedback, is not, I don't need to defend my feedback to you. I can explain it to you, but that's not what people want, right? Because otherwise you just go again into a defensive mode, etc., etc. That's not going to help you. Yeah. So that's first rule of feedback. If you want to help people, you lead by example. But also first rule of feedback is no feedback on the feedback. Yeah. What do you think? Have you been in that position where someone, you ask for feedback, someone is giving you feedback, and then you went back to, kind of try to explain, justify, etc., etc.
Definitely.
And I think it doesn't go well when you provide feedback on the feedback, because it can turn into a discussion really quickly. Like you're trying to defend yourself and the other person trying to defend their feedback. So I think not providing feedback, that seems really a good idea, like just listen and take it in.
Okay. Right.
Just eventually you can end up not agreeing anyway, but at least you took the time.
This is the thing. But this is the thing. Feedback. No, someone I think Elder said it before. No, like it's subjective. No, it's your opinion, right? Of what? Okay, of course it's your opinion. It's always someone's opinion. No, how I think the thing should have been. No, whatever. But again, that's the whole point. No, it's your opinion. I don't have to agree with your opinion. No, it's your opinion, but I want it, because they're hidden within your opinion. There may be things, that I think are valuable to me, and then that will help me improve. Yeah. By the way, there are many types of feedback. People call it positive, negative, etc., etc. I prefer to, appreciative, constructive, whatever you want to use for that, right? But the idea is it will help you improve. There's no bad feedback either, right? Like I already mentioned that, right? if you know how to listen to it. Yeah. So then moving on, the next thing is, okay, so how do I manage to understand? Yeah, Nikita, you
yeah, so the easiest way which I found is the feedback, because here so far I'm listening like how to trick people into giving feedback and actually doing stuff you want them to do. What I prefer to do, I prefer to show people, well, of course they must care, because if the person doesn't care, I don't want this person in my team. That's it. But if the person cares, I would like to show how this person can benefit from my feedback, how his or her life can become easier. So there was an example, like we had disagreement with how Java stream threads work. So I said, look, guys, just try it out. You're right, I'm wrong. Try it out for 10 minutes. When it doesn't work at this point, at this line in the code, come back to me. I'm all open. 10 minutes after, we're still friends.
Okay, let's put a pin. Let's put a pin on that one, yeah, because that's not very, very like. I'm sorry, no, but from my perspective, it might not be creating the effect that you're after, yeah. But I kind of understand what you mean. No, it's like try it out, give it a chance, whatever. Have an open mind.
No, I actually meant something different. Let's say you put bad code in product well, you commit the bad code, so. Instead of coming and saying, oh, you must follow all the rules which Sneak imposes on you, I will say that, okay, let's look half a year ahead. You'll have when we get hacked or something, it will be an impact on your career. So this manager will see it, this team will see it. So let's improve.
Okay, let's put a pin on that and we'll continue, right? But you did mention something around trying to manipulate people. And this is precisely part of my point with this first part, is that the initial part is not how do I get the other person to do what I want them to do, is how do I create an environment where people want to learn and improve what they're doing, and then they will ask for feedback, and then we'll be able to do this, which is the hardest part to do, right? We will get to the tactics, yeah, later on. So following up on where we left, right? Like no feedback on the feedback, and then how do you teach them to unwrap that present that is covered in stuff? Well, for this, yeah, there is I don't know if some of you know what nonviolent communication is. Have you heard of nonviolent communication before? Yeah, I see some people nodding. Yeah, so Rita, you're there like saying like what is it, like what have you heard?
It's a way of explaining things, but not just regarding the words. It's about also the way you speak and the gestures, I think. Maybe I hope I'm not wrong. It's a way of yeah, exactly, like explaining things in a way that overall, like your actions and your words are well, non-violent, not aggressive, not extreme.
All right, so there's some of that, right? So nonviolent communication is an approach or a method that a guy called Marshall Rosenberg, who was a family therapist, yeah, came up with in order to facilitate communication, right, in relationships and so on, right? And it basically is focusing on communicating in a way, yeah, in which you respect the other person's space. Let's put it like this, right? Like you have two people, no, everyone's got their own thing that they consider their space, right? And when I go and I say, because you Helder always do blah blah blah, I'm kind of going into your space, right? I'm judging you, I'm not. And then what is the normal reaction usually, right? Helder then gets defensive, and then turns back and but you always do this other thing, and then there's no way that communication can happen. Yeah. So he came up with a way to structure, let's say, the reflection, and created a tool that allows you not only to communicate, yeah, in a way in which you are respecting the other person's space. And by the way, I'm using space in the most loose sense of this, right? Like, again, it's not physical space, yeah? But at the same time, you're able to get across what it is that you want to say. Yeah. And this is a tool that you can use for communication. It's a tool that you can use to empathize with yourself. And it's a tool that you can use to empathize with the other person as well. Right. And again, this is very coachy like or whatever, but we're all people, even if you're writing code or whatever, you all this stuff applies to you as well as a coach and as a team member and so on. So what are those steps? Well, he first starts with an observation. What is an observation? Let's see. Let's do another example. Yeah. If I say, Elder, you arrived late to the daily meeting, or your design, the design patterns that you use here are sloppy. No, or you broke the single responsibility principle here, or whatever, right? Is that an observation? Is that what is that? Let's use the first one, right? Like you arrived late. Yeah, so that's an easy one.
To me, that already, yeah, I was going to say that to me that is already pretty accusatory.
Why?
Because you are already assuming that you are late, and it's kind of addressed towards the person and not the behavior.
That is actually a judgment. It's not an observation. It's a judgment, right? You saw something, yeah, and then you apply some sort of, and then you're delivering the judgment. Yeah, late, too much, too little, right? Like the word "too," it's usually no, always, etc. All of those things are kind of triggers and kind of tell you that there's judgment happening there. Yeah. So how would the observation be in that case? What would an observation be for Helder?
That something happened. What actually happened, not what you
so
put.
What actually happened? Exactly. So what actually happened?
Maybe you will ask why you have been late, or
no, that's late. That already that you're using the judgment in the
question. I have been waiting you here for a couple of minutes or something.
You could probably say something along the lines of, we agreed that we would have the daily meeting at 8 in the morning, yeah, and you arrive at 8:15, or you arrive at 9.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an observation. Did you, of course, given that the guy really arrived at 9, right? No?
Yeah.
Yep.
Nikita has something to say.
Yep.
Yeah. So first of all, if person wants to see you as an aggressive, anything can be translated into aggression, even if you don't speak. It will be microaggression, hip hop. But normally I would ask, if it's a good person, same goals and stuff, I will ask, are you all right? Has anything happened? Because it looks like something is happening. Is there something I can help with?
So you're using empathy to some extent. No?
Well, I want to learn more, because I cannot judge, because what if they have like elderly parents and there's cancer situation, and it's like,
yeah, I understand that. But again, remember that we're looking at this from the point of view of the person that is listening, right? Like I'm now introducing the method, yeah, but we were not at the point of I'm going to deliver some feedback, but I am receiving some feedback. Yeah, and let's say in this case, I was the one, the elder was the one telling me, oh, so you arrived late, no? Oh, hey, so your code is shit, whatever, right? Like whatever it is that the feedback is, right? So that's an observation, no? It's basically a judgment, no? And we think that we're making an observation, right? So the next step in the process, yeah, is the feeling, right? When he says that to me, or when he's saying that to me, yeah, what is the feeling that's behind that? When I said to Leo, was crap, are you joking, whatever, right? Like, what was the feeling behind that?
Shame
of the person.
or
well, that's maybe what Leo is thinking, no, or what I'm feeling as a receiving, no, the feedback, no. But Leo may be angry.
Sorry,
well, Leo may be frustrated as well, no, because I sent him a pull request. He spent an hour to understand something that whatever, like, and he lost his time, and
my head hurts.
Exactly. So all of those things are there. No? So there's what you first see the observation, and then you have the feeling. This is how it makes me feel. Yeah. And why does it make you feel like that? Because you have a need that is not being fulfilled. In Leo's case, it could be, I don't have control over my time. Yeah. I'm really pressured to deliver something else, and I'm having to spend, the time on this. And that is what is frustrating me. And that's why I told you, blah, blah, right? Yeah. And then the last step for this would be the request, right? Leo's request was, don't ever send me a pull request, no, or the next time that you send me we'll put a readme on it, right? Like, or whatever,
get out of my sight.
Or get out of my sight. Yeah, exactly, right? So this is the thing, like the things quickly escalated, and the request in many cases doesn't have anything to do with with what happened in between. Yeah, or at least we are not able to see that first glance. Yeah. So when you start applying this to not only to you, right, but to what the other person is saying, yeah, if they said your presentation is crap, no, you can then use this to kind of help them think through what it is that they're saying and get the information that you need as well. Yeah. So an example will be, hey, what was it that you saw, in my code that you didn't agree with, or that you're asking me not to send you any more pull requests or whatever, right? And then he can explain and say, it was too many changes for one pull request, and there was no readme, I don't have enough context of the domain, whatever, right? Like the list, these are the things that I saw, whatever, right? Or this was poorly coded. Even if he's making judgments, yeah, you can disable those judgments. Oh, this was poorly coded. What exactly did you see that was poorly coded? Could you give me an example, etc.? And you can dig into that, and then you start getting stuff out of the thing, right? And also there's the feeling part. Okay, so you saw these things. Is it okay? Is it fair for me to say that you felt like you were wasting your time? Is that it? That then you can kind of check your assumptions about how we may be feeling regarding this. Yeah. Because what is happening, like before Nikita was saying, how are you, like what is happening, etc. So this will help you to untangle the judgment mixed with request, mixed with whatever that we normally use to communicate. Yeah, especially when you are being the one that receives the feedback. Yeah. And if you're able to apply this, by the way, it takes effort and it takes, training. You need to really get into it, because you're still hearing what they're saying, and it takes will, not to react to that, right? He's saying I'm an idiot. What is this? No, you need to stop there. No, maybe empathize with yourself. What is happening to me? No, I needed some recognition. I needed whatever, right? And then once you know what's happening to you, then you can maybe have that conversation. No. Now, the other thing about the request, yeah, is that people sometimes think of request, but they're actually making a demand. What do you think is the difference between a request and a demand?
Whether it's optional or not, I guess. Like, or I guess, yeah, demand kind of implies authority, whereas a request is more of a kind of flat, I'm asking my peer to do something.
Well,
if they want.
But you already mix something there that is usually people tend to mix up, right? Which is no, a request is very polite, it doesn't have any threat, and no, doesn't have anything to do with how you communicate it. It's what happens if I don't do what you are asking me to do.
Yeah, so whether it's optional or not, right?
Yeah. Is there going to be some sort of retaliation? Yeah. So that is No, a lot of times we give feedback, and we're making a request. Well, the next time, could you, this? And what we really mean is, if you don't do it again, if you do it again, I'm gonna slap you.
Yes.
No? So that's also quite important to keep in mind. But it's a good tool that will help you to empathize with the other person, and to also, when you're receiving the feedback or giving the feedback, because then you can also use that structure to provide feedback. Yeah. Hey, Elder, we agreed that we will be meeting at 8 and you arrive at 9. Yeah. To be honest, that makes me feel like, you don't value me, or you don't value my time, or whatever, right? I could have been doing other things. I want to have ownership over my time. I need to feel valued, etc., etc. No, could we, next time that you're running late, could you just let me know, or maybe cancel the meeting beforehand, or whatever, so that I'm able to plan ahead. Yeah, but that's a different approach as well to do that. Yeah. Okay, moving forward, we have quite a bit of content. The other thing that actually people need to train how to deal with, is something called the ladder of inference. Have you heard of the ladder of inference before? No? Okay. So the ladder of inference, and I have a graph here somewhere. It's a little model that helps us think how people make inferences from the observations that they see and jump to conclusions. Yeah. And how we act on those conclusions. Yeah. When we really, didn't really test, those assumptions that we were making are actually valid. Right. And this is where a lot of things happen, right? Like, I could, in the example that I gave before, he was late. That is, I don't know, because he hates me, because he doesn't want to do Scrum, whatever, right? Where I can come up with a bunch of inferences, on what is happening there, and then reciprocate or kind of act on those things, but I haven't tested what is if those things are a reality or not, right? So I'm basically acting on a bunch of assumptions, and there's a lot of biases that contribute to that, like attribution bias and all that. It's like when people do things because they are evil, they have bad intention, they go, no, they're like that. No, when I do it, it's because of my context, right? Like, I didn't have enough time, I didn't have so all of those things are kind of there, right? And this is quite important, because a lot of the times you see things, or they're not following through with doing TDD. We agreed that they were going to be doing TDD, and now this guy is simply breaking all the tests every time, or they commit code without then I get pissed off, because that really means I already spoke to him once, right? So he's just making fun of me, or he doesn't respect me, or whatever, and then things escalate, and then eventually a whole nuclear war starts, right? So knowing this tool and how it works, allows us to short circuit some of those behaviors in us, right? And again, it has a lot to do as well with empathy, right? Like how I think about these things, right? Like how I think and how I react to things, because that's what I can control a lot of the time. Yeah. So if let's take that example. Someone is we say that we're going to use TDD, in the team. For those who don't know, TDD is test-driven development. You're supposed to write your test before you write the code, and I can agree to certain. If this was part of the process, you may agree to certain level of coverage, whatever, right? And you agree to certain things, and people are not, and someone in your team is not fulfilling those, right? So what is it that I am seeing? I may be seeing that this feature here is missing tests, or this feature here, some tests broke, and they're not fixed. That's the first thing. No, I see some tests that are broken, whatever. The next step on that is that I select the data, right? I'm seeing the tests that are broken, or I'm seeing the missing test, but I'm not seeing all of the other tests that maybe he did add, because those are green, no? Right? So I am selectively choosing what I want to focus on. Then I say, he's not doing it because, no? He doesn't believe in TDD, because he doesn't like me, because I was the one who proposed it, or whatever, right? Or for instance, I assume as well that, you know, he has the ability to write those tests correctly, no, or whatever. He knew that this was wrong, and no, and then I draw my conclusions, and then, you know, that reinforces my belief that, you know, Eldon doesn't want to do TDD. He shouldn't be in my team. No. See how things escalated pretty quickly. Yeah, I went all the way to the nuclear option of I don't want this person in my team or whatever, right? Out of an observation that could be very well interpreted differently, right? It could be, I don't have the skills to do this thing, and I needed some help, and there was not enough time, or we needed to put something in production, and, you know, we needed to skip some quality gates, whatever. Yeah, I'm not saying it's right, but there's a different explanation definitely than he doesn't want to do it because he's evil, right? Yeah. So the way that we use this is by applying the steps and understanding more or less how we go about it, how we arrive to those conclusions. We can then trace back. Is it really? No. Am I better off without this person in my team? Why do I think it's better off? No. And then you can start walking it down until you find where the holes in your theory are. And then, I'm not saying they're not correct, yeah, but then you can start testing. Hey man, I want to talk, Elder, I want to talk to you because I saw that you did this comment. There were a few tests that broke, and I didn't understand, no, if we agreed on this thing, why that happened. And then Elder could say, oh yeah, I know, but this is what happened, blah, blah, or I didn't know how to test those, so I really just let them there like that, and I was hoping that you would give me some time, you know, some of your time to work on this together because I don't know how to test it, whatever, right? That's the thing, right? So something that, you know, and this happens all the time. This is very natural, by the way. We draw a lot of conclusions, and all of those biases, and is part of human nature and staying alive, right? Like if you make quick decisions, that you can't always go and test every single thing that you get. But a lot of the times it gets in the way of the communication and giving that feedback and so on, right? Questions here? Is it clear, like how to use this model and what to expect? Yeah. Then the next thing that you can do is, okay, now people are asking for feedback, etc. So now let's teach them, you know, to make that delivery a bit better, you know, and that involves preparation. You can start by focusing on appreciative feedback. So teach people to give feedback on things that you know are not going to be a big problem. Like when you see someone doing a good job, give them feedback. Make it specific. What is it that I like about your presentation? What is it that I like about your code, right? Hey, by the way, I reviewed your pull request. Nice solution on, you know, sorting out that list of whatever, right? Like that was really good. Yeah, I'm probably gonna use it somewhere else. That's feedback as well. Yeah. So if you start creating that feel good sensation as well, no, where people are delivering feedback, they get used to that, then, you know, when you have to talk about things that are not going that well, it's easier to do that. Yeah. Now we go into some other tactics and so on. I want to bring this up because a lot of the times there is an adversarial thing, and this was, for instance, when Nikita was saying before, you know, try this, you know, when you're wrong, you know, when you realize that you're wrong, you can come back and tell me. That approach is very adversarial, right? It's like there's one solution, I am right and you're not. And starting from that set of beliefs is really hard for people to communicate well. Yeah. And that's a stance, that's a belief, right? You already come with, Nikita, by the way, I use that example, don't feel at all, it could be anyone, it's very common, okay? I'm not saying at all, but that's what's underneath, right? This idea that, you know, there's one solution, usually, you know, my solution is better than yours, or this, or no, instead of an approach of collaborative problem solving, right? Where you come in with, hey, I don't have all the information, yeah, there is a solution, I think it's this one, but we are going to create what that solution looks like together, right? And that approach is a lot more constructive and less antagonizing, no? When you are approaching this, right? And it kind of goes into the techniques of it, because the underlying beliefs that you have on when you're giving feedback and approaching the situation also tells you how you use the tools, right? So before we were talking about the sandwich thing is really a manipulation, right? It's a tool to get you to listen to what I'm saying and not feel too crappy about it, right? But as we already said, it's a tool that once you know what's behind it, it completely loses any kind of effectiveness. Yeah. Collaborative problem solving, on the other hand, does not. Yeah, because you don't come to a conversation and you're right or you're wrong or whatever. No, you come to the conversation with, hey, there is this thing that I think is an issue. Do you agree on this being an issue? Yeah. Do you want to solve it together? Yeah. I think this is how we could approach it. What do you think? This is oh, there's more information that I didn't have. Oh, that's great. Let's work on that. And you may come, you may go out of the conversation, going back to the goal, yeah, of why you're giving feedback. You may come out of the conversation thinking differently, having changed your mind. Oh, that's true. Like here, this pattern is actually better than what what I was proposing to do, because there are these things that I didn't think about. Yeah. And again, this is very common, right? Especially developers are very humble, right? So that's usually going to be the case, right? People are going to go from, this is right, and this is the right way to do it, and so on, especially if there are people that, read a lot of books or whatever, right? Like they read a lot of books, but have relatively little experience applying what those books have. So it's kind of like a rule of thumb that they always follow. And then, so challenging those things sometimes may get you into this kinds of conversations, when you're doing that technical coaching. Yeah. One last thing about this is the anonymous feedback. Like, in my opinion, that should not be the case. Like, you don't want anonymous feedback, although some people think, oh, we'll let anyone say whatever they want, and that's great. But anonymous feedback is, in my opinion, a bit of a cop-out. Yeah, there is a problem, which is people cannot tell each other what it is that is happening. Yeah, for whatever reason, lack of trust, etc. And then you're giving this outlet that is really not working on the underlying problem of lack of trust. Yeah, it's just letting stuff out. Yeah. And there's also a problem with being anonymous, is that you can't have a conversation. You can't really ask more. No, like it's typical. Oh, there is some feedback that says X, Y, Z, and I would really like to understand what this person is saying about. Nobody's going to reply, because as soon as they say no, that's not anonymous anymore, right? So that's also important. The last piece, and I think this is the least. There are plenty of books on this stuff, and I can give you some reference as well. But the last part is more on the tactics of how to give feedback. And again, some of these are very common sense, right? Others are a bit more, you may need to think a little bit in mind, but we already discussed some of this. So start with the end in mind. What is it that you're trying to accomplish with this feedback? When we don't have that clear, a lot of the times the conversation just goes, usually ends badly. Let's put it like that. Yeah. And again, you may come in, be ready to change your mind as well. When you're having that kind of conversation. So that's would be one of the main things to do. Yeah. Then another thing that Elder mentioned, right? Like people are attached to their work. So make it very clear that what you are providing feedback on is not the person. And use language that also reflects that, right? When you did this thing, it's about what you did. It's not about you. Okay? And try and make that very clear. Like this what I want is to change this behavior. I don't know. You're a person. You decide whether you want to change or not. That's all, right? There are certain tools like Lego Serious Play and all these things that help you with this kind of stuff. Having code and criticizing the code is actually one of those. But people are attached to their code. There's even if you're criticizing the code, people might feel like you're criticizing them, right? So you need to be very clear about that. Yeah. Then the person providing the feedback is also an issue, right? Like as you said before, if the people are not ready to listen to what you're gonna say, or if there is some previous problem with the relationship itself, when you're providing the feedback, that may already taint whatever it is that you're saying, because there is already some bad blood or whatever. So you need to take care of that, or find someone else to do the feedback or whatever, but it may not be the best thing. The other mistake that people usually have is like they don't make it timely, right? Like I'm gonna give you feedback, but I give you feedback, on your 6-month review instead of giving you feedback when you did that presentation or when you did that pull request or when so basically I keep it up, I bottle up, and it grows bigger or whatever, right? Also, it's disconnected from the point where things happen, so your ability to learn from what happened is reduced, because you may not even remember what you did, a state of mind, whatever. You may not even be able to do the things that you need to do in order to change that or to improve from that. So that's another important point. Another thing that people do is, I need to talk to you. And they don't tell you what it is that they want to talk about. Yeah, that's quite terrible. That creates anxiety, stress. Just tell them. It's like, oh, by the way, I review your pull request. Yeah, and there's a few things that I think can be improved. I would like us to get some time to discuss them and see what's up. Simple, right? And when do you have time? Whatever. And that way, you reduce the level of stress. Be specific. Again, what was it that you saw? What was it that and you can also provide examples to how to do it differently, right? Like instead of doing this, I would have done with this other pattern. Instead of doing this, I would have done this other thing, right? Yeah. Also focus on the future, and that is quite important, because a lot of the times we talk a lot about what happened in the past, but the idea is that you will be what you want is a change forward, right? Like you want them to change their behavior moving forward. 1 second, the baby's here and I need to.
The baby is asking for feedback.
Yeah, she wants to participate in the meeting. So focus on the future, right? Like you want, basically, how could you do it better next time? That's also quite because you can't really change the past. There's no point on beating a dead horse, right? So what is it, if this happens again, what can we do differently? Like what is that's quite important. Yeah. Avoid the judgment. Again, too much, good, bad, late, instead of those things, right? Try to use things like do more of, or do less of, or let's do this differently, right? And those things, I don't know if you can hear the baby there, but she's screaming. Another point, and I cannot stress this enough, like work with people to design the process for giving feedback. So instead of going and trying to manipulate them with the language, hey, Elder, I saw this thing. Remember, I wanted to talk to you about the testing stuff that I mentioned on Slack. Yeah, cool. So, so there are things that worry me about this. Yeah, what do you want to do? Should I tell you what I saw and how, why I think this might be a problem? You may have information that I have, that I don't have, so we can understand better, and then we can decide how to move forward. Or would you like to already explain what it is that you want to explain to me? Like, how do you want to do this? And design the process together. That is a lot more powerful, and it goes into the collaborative mindset, that I was talking about before. And it's much more effective. Yeah. Again, do you want us to go through the code? Like, there's many ways that you can go about doing something like that. Yeah. Also follow up with this person, right? Like, especially if you're doing technical coaching and you gave them some feedback, etc., like follow up with them. Like, was this helpful or not? Where have you applied it again, etc., and see the evolution, right? And maybe things that you thought were clear and not clear enough, all the factors that are not. So follow up so that it doesn't. Also, you get some feedback yourself as well, right? Like it's part of the loop. Yeah. Listen actively. Again, if you're not using MVC or whatever, like, do ask questions. What is it that you didn't like? How would you have done it differently? Like, all these things will help you, and stay curious about the thing. Don't react to the first thing. Also, keep in mind that everyone is right in part, right? So whatever it is that they are seeing that is creating that opinion or whatever, there's some reality in that. Yeah. So you need to recognize that as well, right? Like, what is it that they're seeing that is making them feel this way or whatever, right? And that also helps towards the conversation. I already mentioned this. Open your mind, like be open to change. And if you're coming in with an idea, this is what needs to happen or whatever, that may not be the case. So stay open. Be consistent with the feedback. This is also quite important. Like, oh, you did this, great. Oh, but it's the same thing, right? Like, that's completely messing things up, right? Like, if you want improvement to be there, like, basically provide good, consistent feedback. Yeah. And the other thing is, try to provide both, right? I already talked about this when introducing it as a part of the process. Just try to provide appreciative feedback as well. In fact, there's this study that says that for every constructive feedback or negative feedback, now you need at least 5 times the amount of positive or appreciative feedback, right? So create this environment where positive feedback is abundant, and then it will be easier for people to have these conversations and to give each other feedback and work things out. Yeah. And that is it. That is the everything I have for today. I hope that it was helpful, that it helped you connect with some things that you can start doing maybe tomorrow, if you are working in a team and would like to help them grow. Even if you're a technical coach or not, I think all this stuff is quite helpful in life in general. So hopefully, you got something out of it. Yeah. Do you have any questions before we close?
Yes, I wanted to ask about the specific point of make it timely. You talked about the example of not giving the feedback at the quarterly review or doing it right after the presentation. But my question is, can you give feedback too soon? Could it be not that maybe after somebody has given a great presentation and he or she is under the impression that she has done very great and she's excited, is that the right time to maybe crush her or crush him, telling him that was not actually so good? Should you maybe wait the next day, or what's your take on that?
Well, you used a word there like crushing. And in particular, that already tells me, like, you're gonna be ruthless, kind of, and that doesn't necessarily need to be the case, right? Like, again, you can give appreciative feedback as well, right? And you don't say, oh, is it the right time to give appreciative feedback, right? Like, right,
oh no, but I meant the
should I tell them how well they did in the presentation? No, you just don't want to. And to be honest, it really depends on what you are after, right? Like, if you think that the person is going to be more receptive later on, or whatever, that's, you can even ask for permission, right? Like, hey, I really like the way that the presentation went. I have a couple of pointers on how I think this could be improved. Do you want them now, or do you want them later, or do you not want them at all? It's fine. Okay. No, and they can say, no, I think the presentation was perfect, and that's it. And that's it. And then you keep your opinion to yourself, because there's no point in delivering it anyways, right? So that's the idea, right? Like, but you need to be kind as well, right? Like, the idea is not to crush anyone. You're all, you're trying to help people improve, right? So that's the thing, the main thing.
Yeah, no, what I meant by crushing it was more like you are going to say that something was not right. So
yeah, like they're basically
the other person...
happy, and now you're bringing the mood down because you're giving them something constructive to it. And again, this is what I'm trying to say. Like, it really depends. Some people like you to give them the feedback when it happens, and some people don't like to hear the feedback, or some people will ask you for the feedback if they want it, right? So it's, again, this is why I started with teach people to ask for feedback, because it's very different than if they can be super happy, but then they come to you and say, hey, like, I really like to improve. I'm happy with how it went, but, do you have any pointers for me? That's a lot more powerful than, you trying to crush them or whatever, because maybe, maybe they're okay with the way that things are going. That's it. Emmanuel, you have your...
I agree.
Yeah, I was about to comment about what Pere was commenting, not adding something. I like the point of view that Simon Signer made when he talked about feedback to a friend that did like a stand-up comedy, and she did like real bad, but he knew that she couldn't take the feedback at that moment because she was like really happy, and it was like her time to like shine. And then what he did was avoiding the point, but that's also because he knew the person, so he avoided to comment anything at that time. He just say great and pointed the positive things, and then at the next day, after that moment just went by, then he asked if he could give her like the feedback that he has, and then at that time, then he gave the feedback. That's another point, which is like similar to what Jose was mentioning.
Yeah, and also there's the separation between, I'm going to give you the appreciative feedback, and I'm not going to give you the constructive feedback at the same time, because that's going to, what are you going to think, right? Like, I want you to focus on the positive one, or the appreciative one, and then, we'll have time to talk about the others. No, that's is also part of the process. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, Jose, I want to tell you about a couple of moments that you make me think about this not agree moment during the feedback. For example, if we have the typical person that say, can I give you feedback? And sometimes you require some courage to say no, because I'm not in the mood, for example. No? Or the example that you put before, that is, okay, maybe I'm your boss, I'm working with you, this super streamed conversation, and you're telling the other person, okay, let's can we work with about this together? So the other person need a lot of courage to tell you no in front of the boss, for example. And so in that situation, to grant the context to the other person that can tell you no, or another option, or wherever, what do you suggest? Because for me, it's not totally clear starting the conversation saying, okay, you can tell me no, but I will ask you for that. And maybe you are pushing the person to tell you no without even trying to do that. So don't know. What's your opinion about it?
So there's an aspect of the authority and whether people feel confident to tell you no, or whatever, right? So that needs to be addressed. If there is fear to whatever, or the authority is too much, that's something that needs to be worked on. There is an aspect as well of how and why you go about it, because if you are someone's manager, for instance, or if you're a technical coach, let's say, no, which is the point of this thing, you're there to facilitate a change, right? So you are trying to get some stuff done as well. So, and delivering the feedback is part of getting that done. Yeah. So that's also an aspect. No, it can't always just be about the person. You try to mitigate that as much as possible, but sometimes people do need to hear things that they don't necessarily want to hear, like babies talking. But that's that's the thing. Now, if you start a conversation with like, hey, you can tell me no, yeah, it is giving people an out, but it's not really resolving the issue if you need to get it done. You know what I mean? So I guess my perspective on this is work on the on the trust, and the people can feel comfortable saying no, or they don't feel no. Work on the method on how you go about doing that, right? Like as I mentioned before, it's like, hey, there's the things that worry me about this. How do you want to go about doing it? Yeah. Because that's already kind of like, help me understand what is the best way that we can do this thing together. It's not about me blurting some stuff out. Is it? I want to help you so how do we do this together, right? And that's what I would like. I would work on the trust aspect and on the method aspect. And yes, you can ask people to say, you can say no, but that's not really going to resolve the issue, right? Like that you have on the line, which is they either don't feel comfortable to do it, or you are basically pushing back, giving the feedback, but you still need to deliver the feedback. So if you don't want it now, you're gonna have to get it some other time, right? So that's what I would focus on.
I think it has to do a bit with the end, what you mentioned before, Jose, that start with the end in mind, because if you really need a change to be made, if there's a purpose to it, you need to be more assertive. You cannot be treading so lightly and be afraid to hurt other people above wanting the goal to be achieved. But like the example of the presentation, I mean, the presentation has already been done. You can improve for next time. So maybe now I can wait and give it later, because that's not going to change anything. On the other hand, the pull request, yeah, we need to address that now, because you cannot merge this code like this. So I don't know, maybe here you can be, depending on the goal, you can change the way you address to be, nicer or to crush someone's feelings.
But that's the thing, like why crushing? Like that's one of the things that I mentioned. It's not.
No crushing, no crushing.
With empathy, with
yeah.
It's not about crushing anyone. Like that's not.
No, but being more assertive, being more. This has to be changed. Let's do it together, or you might change this if you want, and if you don't want, you don't have to. Like allowing for the no.
I actually spoke about this in other sessions as well, like the whole launching the team and the initial DPA, and there's a couple of sessions where I talked about this, where it's really important that the team is on board with the coaching process, basically, right? So if people don't want to change anything, then but if they do, they will actually want the feedback. So this is quite important as well, setting those expectations and clarifying that kind of stuff. So again, it's not everything works together, right? Like all of those elements need to be in place if you want to have to be effective when you're doing that. Yeah. And again, people may not, it's part of the job as well to act a little bit as a reflection to the team, and to tell them things that maybe they're not seeing or they don't want to hear. That's how it is. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes.
So you've been very, very participative. I love that. Thanks for all the great questions. Yeah, this is me providing appreciative feedback to all of you. So great, and I hope you enjoyed it. And again, the session, this is a series. I think there's one more that we're going to do about change as well, like leading change inside the organization as a technical coach and so on. But if you want to check out the others that we've done, you can go to our YouTube channel and you'll see the playlist there. And if you have questions or whatever, feel free to reach out, tweet, whatever. I'm happy to get involved on that, answer the questions. Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, for coming.
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you for organizing.
Thank you, team.